Okay, Evan, I think take it away.
Let's go begin. Okay, well, welcome everybody, and thank you all for joining us today and for several other days over the next couple of weeks for what is the first ever Full Circle Beverage Conference online, live in your home, in your living room, dining room, wherever you may be. But we're going to be kicking off momentarily with our first session. Our first session will have some wine, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. But it's really all about being in the times that we're in and being entrepreneurial, innovative, and inspirational during these times of COVID and looking forward. So I'll bring it back to Limeng to sort of take that all over in a minute. But I thought what we could do would be just sort of get started and set a little bit of housekeeping groundwork. I don't know where I would be without ever doing housekeeping. I think all of you would probably think I'd go into twitching movements because housekeeping is my middle name. But we're going to be doing 8 individual sessions over the next 4 weeks. And these sessions, many of which will include accompanying Master of the World kits of wines, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll celebrate different wines, different regions, different topics, innovation, OIR, OTR, and everything else around us. All the sessions are going to be 90 minutes in length, and we'll start same bat time, same bat channel as we're doing today. So I can only speak for Pacific time, and I know we have folks from everywhere, but that will always be from 11 o'clock Pacific time morning to 12:30 p.m. There'll be 8 of these sessions. There'll always be a happy hour afterwards. I like to call them happy half hours because they're scheduled for a half hour, although I guess we can drag them on if people are into it. In addition to that, because we'll be drinking and yakking and all of that and sedentary for so much of this, Kat, God bless her, is going to be joining us with some yoga sessions. For those of you who yoga away, a little bit of wellness there. Who are you all? You're 325 plus folks, and I know a few more people registered this morning, so hopefully we're closer to 330 from all over the country and all over the world. In addition to our extraordinary panelists, who I'll discuss momentarily, there'll be winemakers, there'll be principals from wineries all over the world, trade association reps, talking about their wines, et cetera, et cetera. Our fabulous panelists who are listed there on the screen are many, and they are all good. I know a lot of them were emailing me ahead of time and asking if I were putting these in love order, who do I love the most followed, but no, there's just an alpha order because I love you all equally. But by the way, any one of those panelists, if you want to learn more about them for their individual session, you can click on their bios and photos later. So let's move on and talk a little bit more specifically about the platform. So the platform is Thinkific, and you've logged on or you wouldn't be here now for it. Everything is going to live, breathe, and be here. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see a sort of typical interface of what Thinkific provides you when you click on the seminar slot, and each seminar is connected live automatically through the Zoom thing. We're going to be going through lots of stuff. All of these will be recorded, and all of them that have wines will have available tech sheets to the wines. So when you see down there at the lower bottom, the right-hand side, you'll see where the tech sheets are there. So you can do them. We are live. Then you'll have the tech sheets. And those can be accessed at any time. As I mentioned before, we'll always have our happy half hour right after the session. And please note that that's an optional separate link that you need to actually log off and log back on in order to get there. And I would simply ask you on behalf of my entire team to please support our program, stay engaged, stay focused on all that. There will be prompts to answer various surveys and to taste the wines that you receive, and we ask you all to do this. We're trying to make this really work well, and part of that working well is engagement on everybody's behalf. So thank you in advance for being that way and being engaged. So that will take us now to learning. So many of you probably are absolute experts at this point in time with Zoom, but just a couple of reiterations here. There's going to be some of you out there who have kits when we have wine sessions. some of you who don't. I would encourage you that the quality of the learning is such that you'll be able to learn even if you're not tasting the wine. So if you are tasting the wine, we'll talk about that in a minute in the MTW slide, but all the standard features prevail. So there will be Q&A that you can access by the Q&A link down at the bottom. All the questions will be answered either live or emailed afterwards using the Q&A feature, which means that we're not asking you to literally jump in with a question. Rather, type it in for a moderated format a little bit later. The chat box is located just to the right, as you know, and that's for all of you to say hello, to send virtual hugs to everybody, hear about what you've been doing, what you're up to. Very important that you select all panelists and all attendees to be able to share the comments to everybody. The default is the panel only, and while the panelists would love to hear from you, everybody else would love to hear from you as well too. Many of you have reached out to us and let us know early on that while you're going to be able to attend many of these live and in living color, there's going to be some that you won't. The nice thing about this platform is that archived recordings of all of these will be available when the sessions are done. So you just need to be able to go on there and access them at any time at your leisure when you have the time to spend to it. And then timing, I would just say that we're respectful of your time and we want to be prompt and starting and finishing on time. So when you do, join and join early. Plan ahead with the Master of the World kits. As we know of the 8 sessions that we have here, 6 of them have accompanying MTW wines or Master of the World kits. Please, please, please do not wait until the seminar begins. Get a jump start. In a perfect world the day before, and then gas your wines a little bit after, or at the very least on the morning thereof, and beforehand if you want to be able to do that. We would really encourage you to go in and use the interfaces at mtwwines.com. You just need to pop in the number of the kit and you'll be prompted to sort of go through the process of tasting it literally blind, but as importantly as tasting it blind, working on your analytical skills and seeing how you work vis-a-vis everybody else's. There's one session of all of these, which is on October 30th, which is Friday, and that is a blind tasting. So if you want to really engage in that one, please do it the day before and complete the entire format beforehand. To encourage all of you to engage in this format, we're going to be picking one winner per seminar. And the beauty of this Thinkific platform is we know who's engaging and who isn't. But for all those people who engage and work that way, we will be giving away a blind tasting kit for a future kit to one person who will pull randomly from the pool. And for those people who attend live and in person, all 8 sessions, we will have a drawing as well for an annual 1-year subscription to Master of the World. So the gift that keeps on giving, Master of the World. So from there, let's talk a little bit about our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we wouldn't be here today. Much as we would love to be able to do this without any support, that's physically just impossible, given the wines, given all the other good stuff that's going on. But you see a whole list of our tremendous sponsors here. You will be hearing from them and seeing them again as the weeks go on in the individual sessions. But I give everybody a big, big thank you, obrigado, merci, gracias, and everything that you could possibly have for our incredible group of sponsors who are supporting us and making this happen. So on that note, we're going to be jumping in a moment here, but all sessions need wine, even those that don't have Master of the Wine kit. So for today's kickoff and then coming back again on November 10th in session 5, we have wine for you. And we would like to thank our co-sponsors, if you will, or DM, the primary sponsor, and our friends at the Irie Vineyards for sponsoring a bottle of their AbFab 2018 Trousseau, which I have here in front of you. I'm going to pop the cork on it right now. That's a good cork. That's a long cork. And I would like you to take, when you do have a moment or two, spend some time. This is specifically a DM cork. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in our OIR, OTR, bottle age oxygen, and all that other good stuff later. But notice this cork, I spend a little bit there. I want you to pour yourself a glass of wine. Don't drink all of it. Hold some. And then at the end of this class, save yourself about a half bottle for the 10th. But what I'd like you to do is take your DM repour here that I've got. Going to want you to pull the little silver tab off, pop it in the bottle, and then don't touch the bottle again. Well, you can touch it once or twice if you want, but save yourself at least a glass for that session on November 10th. And we'll see not only what the repour is done with that bottle of wine, as well as the DM cork, that we'll talk about later, but how it's done that later. So on that fabulous note, I just want to take my glass and toast all of you, thanking you for being here, for wishing you a rich conference with everybody. And on that note, got to taste and look everybody in the eye. I'm going to turn it over to Limeng to take over from here. Limeng.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Master the World and Full Circle. I just want to say one quick word. For those of you who don't have the wine, we were totally oversubscribed. We were expecting 100 people to want to be in our conference, and we got more like 300 plus. So we don't have wine for everybody. Please drink whatever wine you want to drink along with us. But if you've signed up to receive some wine, we will at least cover you for one of the sessions with wines. We decided to spread the love and make sure that everybody gets a little something. So we hope that you'll come to our sessions, even if you don't have the wine for it, but at least every single session will have at least 100 people with some wine. So without further ado, I want to introduce our team. Usually in Chicago, we don't have the opportunity to introduce our entire team. So the team is popping on right now. In addition to our sponsors, a lot of people work behind the scenes to make this happen. Our team has debated backwards, forwards about whether or not to even have a virtual conference. So first up, I want to introduce someone who's really worked tirelessly to get this conference up and running, Andrea DeLugas.
Hey everyone, greetings from snowy Denver. I'm just so excited to have you all with us here this year and joining us virtually. Wish we could be in Chicago, but I'm really happy to have this opportunity to connect over the next few weeks, and just looking forward to a great few weeks of these really, really fantastic sessions we have in store for y'all.
Awesome. And next we have Courtney Brenner, Courtney Danielsback. Sorry, Courtney, our extraordinary, I can't spotlight and talk at the same time. Walk and chew gum, very tough. Courtney is our multitasker extraordinaire. When she goes on vacation, it's like, what happened? So anyways, Courtney, welcome.
Hi, I'm Courtney Danielsback. I'm from New York City. I'm really looking forward to connecting with everybody. I know we're not in person, but this is such a great opportunity to reconnect.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. Next, we have the friendliest person and the most measured person on our team. We say that because she runs our customer service, and without her, she's really pivoted from a event planner role to handling all of the packages and handling the most difficult of our customers, Paige McConnell.
I'm tuning in here from the Bay Area, just outside of San Francisco, and it's my third beverage conference with Full Circle. And I'm really looking forward to learning from these sessions and this new virtual experience. And I'm really excited, and thank you all for joining.
Great. Thanks, Paige. And last but not least, we have Hannah Smith, who is the latest addition to our team. Full Circle and Master of the World are now not only in San Mateo, but we're also in Healdsburg. It's kind of crazy in 2 places, as Evan will attest to. Hannah Smith.
Yes, hi, I'm Hannah Smith, tuning in from Healdsburg, from our winery facility. This is my first Full Circle Beverage Conference, and I'm so excited to be here with you all, and I hope you all enjoy to the fullest.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, of course, these aren't the only people who work on Full Circle and Master the World, because it's kind of crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge everybody else, especially the Somms who've been coming into our Healdsburg facility to taste all the wines that we open, and additional team members who work up with us in Healdsburg. I think last week there were record days where we're getting out like 250 packages a day, kind of insane. So again, thank you very much for all of those who've touched our team. Now, without further ado, I'm actually going to go straight into our panelists. Today's topic is about entrepreneurship, inspiration, innovation during this COVID period. And now that we've officially kicked off the 6th annual, I want to introduce our 4 panelists who hopefully can turn on their video feed and microphones. Evan and I have spent the last 12 years building Full Circle, and we officially launched Master the World after we've incubated and developed it about 4 years ago. For us, we are not new to entrepreneurship, and we feel like in this really crazy world, in this really crazy time, entrepreneurship is really a bright spot in today's world. So as our collective worlds, our diverse worlds have been rocked by COVID, we bring you 4 leaders whom we feel have really embraced the challenges brought on by these very intense times. And these leaders have not only leaned into their evolutions, they've also gained success in the early few months. We were just commenting before this call that it feels like a few years, but it's only been 6 months or so since this whole pandemic started for us here in the shutdown. So without further ado, I'm going to say hello to Alpana Singh, Master Sommelier.
Hi there, welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. And then greetings from, and also snowy Chicago. So the weather just turned here a couple days ago. And so we're definitely moving into the winter season. Here we go.
Awesome, thanks Alpana. We also have TJ Douglas. Hi TJ.
Hello, hello. Thanks so much for having me. Too bad we're not in Chicago right now, but my name is TJ. And I'm coming in from Boston at the Urban Grape, and I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to this today.
Awesome, thanks TJ. We also have Scott from the great state of Texas.
Yeah, I'm Scott Oda from San Antonio, Texas, actually from High Shoe Wine Company. Really humbled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Scott. And of course, last but not least, the amazing Cristie Norman. Hi, Cristie.
Hi, everybody. Tuning in here from Los Angeles.
Wonderful. Well, in the next hour, I'm going to ask our panelists 3 questions, and I'm going to give them each in a round robin style an opportunity to respond to these questions. And I would love for you guys, as you have questions, you can certainly put them in the chat box, but even better, if you can put it in the Q&A. I believe my team put it as a anonymous thing if you want to choose to be anonymous with it, but we would love to hear from you, and I will try to get to all your questions live. But if we don't, we will certainly answer them offline. So for the first question, Alpana, I'm going to start with you. You're a master sommelier who has been the host of Chicago's Check Please for the last 12 seasons. And you've launched your 3rd restaurant venture, Terra Vine, in 2016. How has your business changed during this pandemic, since the pandemic started? And how have your personal career objectives shifted?
Oh my, yeah, quite a bit. So we were shut down in Illinois on March 17th, and I honestly thought that we would be back, like a couple weeks later. But if you told me on March 17th that we were going to be closed, for 3 months, and then there'd be like a second wave coming, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so what we decided to do, because we did have the benefit of the 3 months where you can kind of think, and it was actually the first time for me in my entire career in the restaurant business where I had 3 months off. It's the longest that I have gone since I was 12 years old where I did not step foot in a restaurant for that long of a time. My parents are both in the restaurant business, so that was a little weird. Now, when we did come back, we did take advantage of the PPP loans, but what I'm about to tell you, as far as what we've been able to do, all rests on one thing and one thing only, and that was that our landlord was willing to work with us to, work on the rent. Without this, none of this would have been possible. But what we did do is we redeveloped the menu. We streamlined the menu to make sure that we cross-utilized everything. We wanted to make sure that the food was relevant to what people wanted to eat based on carryout. And then, we also changed the bar. So what we did was we took out the bar tables and we actually didn't reopen until we were allowed to do inside dining as well. We didn't have a very robust carryout program beforehand. I, had my issues with, Grubhub, et cetera. So I was really nervous about getting into bed with them and just did not have a great experience. So we decided to do curbside carryout only and not sure how that was going to go. And a lot of what we implemented was sort of kind of like moving around in the dark with just a flashlight, not being able to see beyond, what was going to happen. But we did take out the bar tables and we basically took our wine and we started selling it retail to go. And so, I was able to sort of observe what other people were doing, okay, that's a great idea. Let's see. But the whole concept was if people can't go out to dinner, it's not like they're going to turn into the Barefoot Contessa overnight and start cooking, and develop this talent to feed themselves. But people are busier than ever working from home. And also, right now they're doing homeschooling. So how can we sort of like move in here? And then, so selling those wines retail, leveraging technology. So redoing our entire website, and then also bringing in Talk for a 3% commission. And then we also just kind of backed into the ideal situation of a pandemic perfect restaurant, meaning we have a giant patio for outdoor dining. We're Italian, stuff that travels well and people, want to eat, and it's pizza. And then, personally, I've also been doing a lot of Zoom wine tastings. It's something that I'd never done before. And, the whole idea of like doing wine virtually just seems so foreign to me, but it actually works out really well. And I've been staying pretty busy doing that. And then as we're moving into phase 2 now, because the governor shut down inside dining in the township that I'm in, Evanston, and so we're now moving into the second phase. I feel a little bit more comfortable going into this shutdown, knowing, learning from kind of what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 months. And so, we're just kind of like basically now looking to like get through the winter season and Thanksgiving. And, like I said, just kind of asking ourselves, what are people going to be looking for? But, like I said, it's just now we have this sort of like a little bit more experience moving into this phase of kind of knowing what worked and what didn't work, and an audience that's used to curbside pickup and used to carry out. And so I don't know, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Alpana, one of the things that we talked about was this concept of micro. Can you talk a little bit about micro, the micro weddings, the micro corporate events?
So we also have a gigantic event space that's not being utilized right now. The group situation has moved down to like 25 people right now, but people still need to get married. And so we're kind of focused on that. What is the need? And so doing the micro weddings of 25 under, but also revamping our catering program to fit the needs. So if your catering program is feeding groups of 50 to 100 plus, there's no need for that right now. And so people are probably having gatherings of maybe 4 to 6. So we're doing wine and cheese or cheese platters for just 4 to 6 people. So looking at the guests and how many people can be allowed and adjusting and tailoring your offerings to fit those number of people.
Great. And I'm going to just lob one more question at you, and then we're going to go to TJ. You mentioned about how you had to change your beverage program. So what is your strategy with pricing? As you turn the bar into shelves, what have you had to do with pricing? And what's that pricing difference for in-room dining people and the takeout people?
People are drinking more than ever, but they're also people, if they're drinking at home, don't want to spend like they do at a restaurant. And so we kind of took this idea of pricing everything retail and then marking it up $15 if you wanted to enjoy it inside the restaurant. I thought it was a great idea, but people got upset that we were charging them to drink it at the restaurant. I'm like, no, but look at the pricing. In my mind, it makes sense, but we kind of went back a little bit from there. But, a lot of this is sort of experimenting and then fine tuning and fine tuning and fine tuning. Like you can't just launch something and think, okay, now it's done. Like you have to look at the metrics every single day, listen to your customers, and really kind of hone in and shave it down and, sort of sculpt it into what it needs to be. And so what we do now is we offer a select number of wines on Talk to go under $20. And you can even sell it like by the case, because you figure they're coming to pick up their carry out. If they buy like 6 bottles of wine, you just have at the house, then it eliminates a trip, because that's the other thing is people, don't want to go out as much. And so they want to limit the number of times that they're going. And, for me, it's low hanging fruit. I'm a master sommelier. People want to know what I'm recommending them to drink. And, I'm not taking that for granted. And so if I say, hey, this is a great bottle for your house for $12, buy it by the case, I'm hopeful people will sort of, take my advice to heart and go, okay, it must be good.
One more minute and then we're going to move to the next person. I see that Cara Patricia has a comment here about Talk. You've made Talk work for you guys. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between Grubhub and Talk, why you make that switch? Because now people have to go to your store to do pickup, and instead of having it delivered to their house, are people willing to make that transition?
So Nick Kokonis, I think, is like, sort of this mad genius. Within like a couple of days was able to sort of think about like, how can I take advantage of this? And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, he's super smart. So what he did was like literally within like a week, they had adapted Talk to do pickup But understanding kind of from an operator's perspective, they're only charged 3%. That's it. And so it's 3% to basically use the platform. There's a little bit of like learning challenges around it. You know, it's not perfect, but it worked. And I was able to save, like I said, just it was 3% versus using Grubhub, you know, where it's 30% if they deliver. And, you know, most of our customers are within like a 2-mile radius anyway, so they don't mind coming to pick up. And we have like plenty of parking out front where we run it out for you. And so Talk's been really good for us. You know, there's other applications like I think Toast allows for you to be able to take advantage of them. Open Table just launched takeout as well. And so it's something that operators are, you know, there's just a lot of technology out there. You just kind of have to do a little bit of the research. And you know, I mean, it's intimidating and it's daunting, but once you implement it and get it set up, it kind of pretty much runs on its own after that.
Great. Thanks, Alpana. We're going to move now to TJ. TJ, who in the last 10 years has built a thriving retail business, the Urban Grape, with his wife, Hadley. In the last few months, they've turned the money that customers raised for them during a bad patch during the protests into a scholarship model that creates a pipeline for more diversity in our industry. And I'm so excited for what you and Hadley have done. TJ, let's start with your business. How has business changed for you?
Yeah, business for us, we came off of an extremely strong year. 2019 was great. We're going into our 10-year anniversary as a company, and my wife and I had our whole new, you know, business model of like, okay, these are going to be our goals. This is what 2020 is going to bring. And, you know, in January, we started implementing some of these changes that we want to see happen for, you know, kind of like Urban Grape, you know, 2.0, if you will. And then COVID hit in Massachusetts and Boston specifically, where we are, we were extremely lucky that we were deemed essential, because in Massachusetts, my full liquor license is considered a package store license here in Massachusetts. And because grocery stores, some grocery stores, some Whole Foods, Star Markets, Wegmans, they have package store licenses as well, and you can't close down a grocery store. All of us package store licensees in Massachusetts were deemed essential. So, I mean, right off the bat, we were super lucky. Like, so many of my friends had to, you know, close their restaurants, or their restaurant that they worked at closed. The first couple of, I'd say the first like week or two during COVID, when we stayed open, we were letting customers in and keeping them at kind of at a distance of what they can do, and asking them not to touch any of the bottles and wear their mask. And people were coming in with their masks down and touching things and like bringing in their kids and their babies. We're like, what are you doing? You know, like this makes me feel like very unsafe, and it makes my staff feel very unsafe. So we ended up deciding to close our doors to our community, to the public, and they're actually still closed to this day, where all of the other wine shops around us are, you know, doing in-person wine tastings, and now Massachusetts is back up in a high red as of the other day, and they just closed out all of the Boston Public Schools to virtual. So this isn't going anywhere, at least here in Massachusetts. What's been great about how we have changed our company is that, as I mentioned, we had all of our plans of what we want to do this year, but with the highly generated sales, and you know, as a small business, you know, cash flow is you know, it's either really scary or very positive, but then you're scared that it's going to go away. And you know, luckily so far, our cash flow has been great, because people are drinking more, and unfortunately, they're not drinking at any of your restaurants. You know, they're drinking at retail around the country. What we were able to do, and because we already had an online platform, which had about 50% of our products. So I would say it probably had about 500 products online. We already had that set up, so people were ordering online. But what was really interesting is that for a year, we've been trying to train our customers to order online, and they would never do it. But now we're in a world of everyone ordering online. So what we ended up doing, we're past the pivoting stage, right? Now we're just reimagining what Urban Grape is and what we can be. What we ended up doing was hire a local photographer and putting 100% of our products on our online platform, which is Shopify. for a long time, my staff, which are mostly, you know, post-restaurant people, have just spent their days, you know, fulfilling orders, right? We turned into Urban Grape warehouse and fulfillment center, and we were doing upwards of 400 to 500 deliveries a week, which is just absolutely insane because we were doing like 8 a day or 15 a day, and we were giving good service and stuff like that. But my staff started getting that kind of like cloudiness behind their, you know, their caged eyes. My wife had a great idea, and she's like, you know what, in our vestibule outside of the store on the street, let's build some kind of like table or a wine counter. So we had that commissioned and built this wine counter, and now we're able to have our staff go outside masked, put a little like Ring doorbell on it, and now our community can come up and have a safe dialogue with our staff, and we're selling wine like we used to, but it's still kind of a fulfillment center inside. We've done things like the money allowed us to create new positions. So in 10 years, I've been the only wine buyer. Now I have an assistant wine buyer, which allows me to do more things like this. We're bringing in a third full-time driver, buying a third van this week just to, you know, be able to do all the orders. I'm sitting in my rented Industrious office right now because we too do a lot of virtual tastings that I needed a place to do that. About the virtual tastings, we have a division of the company called Urban Affairs, where we do about 120 events, in-store and out-of-store events a year. Now, because all of our companies like Wayfair is around the corner from us, we used to do a ton of in-person events. In March, that stopped. But now we're doing, I'd say, probably about 15 virtual tastings a week. And we're delivering, we're shipping locally, people are picking up curbside, and it's insane. And right before this, I was with our implementation person at Shopify, because I decided yesterday to switch over our entire POS system to Shopify so that our in-store and our online actually communicated together in an omni-channel platform. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And we've actually gone from Urban Grape 2.0 to Urban Grape like 5 point something. It's just been absolutely insane. But as an entrepreneur, like, this is fun, right? Like, you know, making these changes and reimagining what the wine world and retail world is. It's a lot of fun. It's a challenge, but you know, after 10 years in this, I was getting bored too, so I'm not bored anymore. How's that? All right.
Great. Thank you so much, TJ. That's wonderful. We'll come back to you in a little bit. Scott, I'm going to go shift gears now and go to Scott Oda. Food and Wine magazine called Scott one of the tastemakers to revolutionize the business in 2018. He runs, as he mentioned earlier, High Street Wine Company, which is a wine bar and shop in San Antonio, Texas. What is High Street doing right now, Scott?
Yeah, well, we're actually in the process of the reopening. So unlike a lot of other bars and restaurants really in Texas, bars really couldn't legally open their doors again until October 14th. So we've been holed in for quite some time. And I think just like a lot of other folks, the biggest thing for us is to really move everything online. That was the first thing that we had to do. Because we were only able to sell things in sealed licensed containers, we couldn't even do tasting kits for the longest time, up and really until the last month or so. So the big thing for us is after the shutdown, we're like, okay, what are we gonna do? Just like everybody else. For us, we made the decision from day one, we're going to keep our entire staff and we're going to flip them into tech support. So thankfully, one of our all-stars on our team, she is actually in school for web design and internet security and things like that. So we're like, all of a sudden, hey, guess what? Now you're leading the charge and you're going to help us to redesign this website. And everyone else on our team, well, thankfully, a lot of them are already sommeliers, so we just turned them into essentially was kind of a borrowed model off SomSelect, where you're going to take every single bottle that we have in our cellar, you're going to write descriptions for it, and you're going to write tasting notes about tannin, alcohol, acid, everything like that. And then we're going to put it into a searchable database with tags. So this way, if someone wants to search on the website and they're looking, let's say they're looking for organic wines, or they just want all Chardonnay, or they just want sparkling, everything has its own code and will be searchable now on our live POS platform that integrates live time with our inventory. So that was probably the biggest challenge in the beginning. And then Now, obviously, as we're moving towards reopening, we're having to shift forwards toward that. A lot of online classes as well. But the real big challenge, I would say, for us is right around the summertime. As a lot of the other restaurants were able to open up and we had to stay closed, we watched sales really kind of start plummeting as people were making a decision to go out and to go to these restaurants and things like that. We just kind of felt left out in the cold. So it was at that particular time where, okay, well, money's running out. What are we going to do with our team? And so we kind of created it doesn't really have a flashy name. It just is our nonprofit labor program. And so the whole idea here is thinking about, okay, well, if people are going to buy why we're doing something, we got to give them a reason to support us. And at the same time, if we're able to bring in money, we can afford to employ more people. So we came up with the idea, and this had to be unanimous across the team, is that we selected 4 nonprofit partners who were being okay with being associated with a bar. Whenever we sell wine classes or wine packs or anything like that, we would donate 1 hour of our time to help one of our nonprofit partners. And our nonprofit partners was the San Antonio Hope Center, which helps empower people out of poverty, Meals on Wheels, which helps elderly, Alzheimer's care, and things of that nature, food delivery. The San Antonio Food Bank, which now is cranking out 120,000 meals a week to our community who really needs it. And then the last one is West Avenue Compassion, which is kind of a local center that really kind of helps their little local community on the west side of San Antonio. So what we decided to do is any pack that comes with that is 1 hour of our team's time. We would pay them to go work at the nonprofit. So if we're shut down, we ain't got any work to do. so I wasn't going to pay them to sit in an empty bar. So let's pay them to go and do good work in the community. And then at checkout, guests had the option to kind of add and match our contribution of ours. So let's say if they bought a $75 wine pack, instead of us sending one person for 1 hour to the food bank, they can match it for an extra $15. And now we actually have 2 hours to go to the food bank. And we've watched the response be pretty darn well. So now we're actually at the point of rehiring folks as opposed to having to go the other route as well. So that's been able to keep us afloat until we can actually open our doors.
Before I move on to Cristie, I have one question for you, Scott. I thought that was really interesting when you and I had a conversation. What exactly is the staff's sort of pay structure, if you don't mind sharing? Because there is talk about how there are staff members who would rather take unemployment when they can get it because it pays better than, base rate plus tips. So what did you guys do with your salary structure?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, the biggest part about this whole thing, one of the reasons we wanted to start this business was to be able to create a job for professions, to be able to help take care of people within our industry. And so the first thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to give people a reason to stay with us. So Texas is a little backwards. If you're incorporating tips, the minimum wage is only $2.15, which is really, really small. And so a lot of these other restaurants, I know, I see some people shaking their heads, it's terrible. So what we decided to do, and which is why I would think a lot of people took the unemployment, to be perfectly honest. With us, what we decided to do is we took our average tips on what they would normally be. Bad weeks was 22, good weeks, they're hitting $30 an hour in terms of tips. So what we came up with was a compromise, and it has no other rate other than a family first / COVID rate that we were going to guarantee their pay up to a certain point. So the number that we came up with was $20 an hour. So we raised their hourly from $5 an hour up to $15. And then we put a baseline to 20. So if the tips on to-go and retail, wine classes, commissions, anything like that, did not meet their weekly average of $20 an hour, we would bonus them to get to that number. And so that would be able to provide our staff with consistency to where they could all essentially still maintain a livable wage, as opposed to necessarily saying, you know what, I'm out, I'm just gonna take unemployment. And so we were able to retain 100% of the staff that way. And it hurt a little bit in terms of operations financially. But I think, we talk a lot about trust, not just trust with the guest, but trust with your employer. And if the staff knows that we have their best interest, then there'll be like any type of change or pivot that we have to do. They're going to be on board with it, and they have been absolutely phenomenal to be able to step up to the plate and do anything we've asked, whether it be a wine class, whether it be delivery, whether it be Zoom tastings, or whatever we have to do, go working at a nonprofit. It's been pretty amazing, and so I really give a lot of the credit to the team.
Thank you, Scott. It's amazing what you have done. And I know I was very touched when I first talked to you about your labor force and focusing on labor as your starting point. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go to Cristie. Cristie out in Los Angeles. Cristie is the youngest person on Wine Enthusiasts 40 under 40. She's way under 40. And yet she has more than 30,000 hours of education online. Like Evan and I talk about like, oh my God, we got to do this video recording. It's like 15 minutes, like 30,000 hours. That's amazing. And in this pandemic, you've started the United Sommeliers Foundation. So I want to save the foundation for a little later. You could definitely talk about it, but I want you to really expand on it in our second question. But in our first question, Cristie, how have things been different for you with your online business, with your education business? How have things changed?
Yeah, well, I've been at Spago Beverly Hills for the last almost 5 years, and I was running around on the floor, 5 days a week. And I had my online wine course program, which I launched last year. And really, the goal for me was just to create a program that would take a complete novice through everything that the average consumer should know in 3 to 5 hours, with quizzes and worksheets and stuff like that. Because really getting people to the point where they're like, oh, I understand, I want to learn more. It was kind of like bridging that gap. And I wanted to do it with like fun. And so I just like invested my whole life, but I was working at Spago simultaneously. So it was kind of like my like side project. Like I was still doing it and active with it. But when the pandemic hit, I decided to offer it for free for all hospitality professionals that were out of work. I dropped it into about 6 different Facebook groups, like a couple times. I had about 7,000 requests for codes between March 31st and the middle of May. And actually, and I didn't want anything in return. It was just like, here you go. Like, I'll get you a code. I gave them instructions and I said, go and learn about wine. And I hope this helps, in some way. Cause that was something I built the website from scratch. I made it custom. I made it to be scalable. And so there wasn't any additional cost really per user. There's like overhead, but not really that much. It just, had more data and more space, but it didn't really matter. And it was actually amazing because in April, I had the highest sales that I had ever had. It was really overwhelming that so many people actually purchased the course. And then also, I'd been running tasting group for the last 3 years at Spago. So I was, determined to create this really large tasting group where everyone was on time. And I had been hosting blind tastings twice a month and then a master class every month as well. So we would have, between 40 and 70 wine professionals, wine directors, wine buyers, retail. We had all facets though. Like we had people in distribution, suppliers. I know anybody who was interested in learning, who was in the trade, that was the requirement. It wasn't just like restaurant floor somms only or something. And so it was amazing. So like I started doing this. So we have these little tiny 2 ounce, I don't know if you can see these little 2 ounce bottles. And I decided to transition virtually. And so everyone was out of work and everyone was really interested in learning right now and doing tasting group. And so every week, actually this week was the 26th week, exactly 6 months of virtual tasting group. We've done it in a row. So we have blind tasting every single week. I have 10 somms and a mentor. So if the mentor is in Napa, let's say Chris Blanchard or something, we'll overnight him a little sample of wine, the exact same wines that they are tasting. And he's on Zoom doing one-on-one appointments and then a group appointment, with people who are, at the certified level, not the people that are rigorously tasting for advanced. And it's been amazing. And we actually started doing master classes as well. And so, I started doing the master classes to honor the, organizations that had donated to the United Sommeliers Foundation. Like we just did Skarnik, we had co-brand, we did Zind Umbrecht, wines of Alsace. We had 78 people with wine. So I started, partnering with retailers and restaurants around the city, because Los Angeles is very large. And so people actually pick up wines either from me at my little drive-through I have every Sunday, or they pick up and return at different restaurants. And I launched a leadership program. So we're creating this big, like, sustainable community. And everything is low cost or completely free for the Somms. I believe that, I'm kind of calling in all my favors at this point. I used to buy everything and it was always like really expensive wines and I made it really big, but now it's kind of like, let's just get as much wine as possible. And I'm leaning on a lot of friends for support. We've had about 20 different mentors all over the country to come sit with the Somms, and it's growing every day. I feel like I get introduced to more Somms every single day. So
Love it. Love it. I love everything that you do. I love the energy that you have. All the stuff that you're doing with the Somms, I know, I hope you see it in the chat that you are so loved, and so people are so thankful for everything that you're doing. All of you, really, as you were speaking, you can see that people are really reaching out, and thank you for that. What I really love about this session, Evan and I talked a lot about this session as a way to be positive during this very negative and very dynamic period. And so I'm really happy that we're able to do that as a wine industry. There are certainly, there are always blips along the way, but certainly as we learn, I want to now focus on you guys as leaders, as this entrepreneur. What defines you as a leader? I'm going to go back to you, Scott. You've talked a little bit about the labor program. I want to talk about more how you see it as a how do you see yourself as an entrepreneur making a difference in this industry? I know you've talked about the labor program, but if you want to expand a little bit more, especially, what drives you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think, in terms of what drives me as an entrepreneur is, I guess first and foremost, I just don't really look at myself as one. I think the most important thing for me is a caretaker. It's this trust again that we have with staff and with industry, and so much of we talk about relationships with a guest, but I think what is so disheartening to me what I see, and I've been a part of in other restaurants, is that same level of relationship doesn't belong between, let's say, employer and different staff members when it's on a particular team. So for us, it's always culturally focused. It's always how can we make the best possible environment for our team to then be able to then go out and succeed. And so something I've had to learn quite a bit over my career is certainly that trust piece. Being able to trust to certain people to say, hey, if we teach you the systems, exactly how we're going to do something, then I'm going to put my trust in you to go ahead and do it. And I've noticed that every single time that we invest in our people, I am always blown away by the results that we do. And so in terms of leadership, entrepreneurship, it's just putting the right people in place and giving them the tools they need to succeed, and supporting them in every way that we can.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Cristie, I'm going to come back to you. When we talked, you shared some things with me that I thought were just about learning from past mistakes. And I thought if you were open enough, we'll peel back the onion and talk about how you learn from failures in the past, if I dare use that word, to really propel yourself forward as an entrepreneur, especially with the United Sommeliers Foundation. You've created something so amazing, but did you know how to do this from day one?
Well, it didn't really start as wanting to create a foundation. It was just, Chris Blanchard and I were doing a masterclass on March 16th, which I canceled at 2 a.m. because everything was shut down. And we were doing this cool Vine Hill Ranch class. And then, he basically texted me and said, how can we help the Somms? And obviously, because I've been running tasting group for so long, everybody's telling me that their restaurant's going to close, or their restaurant is closed, their job's eliminated, all that stuff. And, yeah, I've always been somebody who wants to help. And 2 years ago, when the scandal happened with the Court of Master Sommeliers, I jumped in and I wanted to do a bottle collection for the MSs who had to resit, because I knew more than half of them personally. And, I knew that we could just get some donations and stuff like that. And we collected hundreds of bottles. And a lot of people that didn't know me really saw that as, me being an attention whore or like hungry for whatever. I don't know. And, I was just doing it by myself. And so when this pandemic happened, when Chris called me, I immediately said, I need to call the most well-respected people in the country. I need to call the most experienced people, because I don't want there to be any, we need to make this anonymous where, all of the candidates are anonymized. We don't see their name, their location. We have somebody who's outside the wine industry actually anonymize every single essay, because we just want to make sure that everybody knows that, it's completely without bias and it's 100% based on the content of, their particular situation. And it was really difficult because I was young, I was 23, 24 years old when this happened. And, but it was a huge reason why, the foundation has gotten so much momentum and traction, because we did have those experienced people and leaning on that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for not shying away from making mistakes. I think that's brilliant that you feel, attacked, and yet you're like, I'm gonna get back up. And I think this is one of the things that I absolutely love about you, Cristie. TJ, I'm going to come back to you in Boston. You've also started a nonprofit program. Why was it important for you and Hadley to start this program? And what has it done to your business? And really, how does this shape you as an entrepreneur?
A lot there. 10 years into the business with COVID, we started having our best year ever. We had the peaceful Black Lives Matter protest here in Boston at the end of May, and we were like just a little tiny bit broken window vandalized. But the wine world, the news world wanted to focus on the broken window, and we were just very clear, like, this is not about the window, right? This is about why people were angry that they had to break a window, or why people were protesting. And, Black Lives Matter being, a global issue, I'm now 42 years old, and I've been in the hospitality and wine and now retail side for the past 26 years now. And typically I'm the only person of color in the front of the house, right? So when I worked for an $85 million wholesaler, I was the only person of color who was a salesperson. When I was a general manager in a restaurant, I was the only person of color besides the people in the kitchen. And then in retail, I'm the only person of color going to like wine tastings. And, a couple of years ago, I'd say probably about 5 years ago, when we were discussing this, Limeng, that I got really frustrated, not with my wife, but to my wife, who was white. And I got really frustrated. And I'm like, look, we're trying to have this diverse company, and we're trying to give this diverse experience. We're trying to, encourage, other people than just my white clientele to come and shop with us and learn about wine and stuff like that. But there wasn't anyone to hire, right? And, if I put an ad out for a sales position or a managerial position, it would typically be a younger white person that would apply. And the people that would apply for a truck driver position, or like, these are titles that they made up, right? Like truck driver or stock boy. Like, we don't have those, right? We have like a delivery person, but they would apply for like stock boy positions. And, I'm like, what, this is not right. If we're not gonna see change in our industry and let these people know that are applying for positions of stock boy know that there are better and greater things out there for them that they could have access to, or at least should have access to, then we need to create that. As I mentioned during the first question during the introduction, as a small business and entrepreneur, like, cash flow is king. Like, if we have a bad month at the store, Hadley and I don't pay ourselves. When we opened up, we lived off of savings for a really, really long time. And our staff always gets paid first. And, if there's any extra in the till, then we take it. But when we were vandalized right after the Black Lives Matter protests in Boston, we had such an insane amount of community support financially. People were just like, we had our best day ever as a company June 1st. And it was just absolutely insane. And we didn't know what to do, and it was heartfelt, and people were just like, we want to support you, and then, the Instagram feeds were blowing up, and we got like a ton of new followers. But then we also had people texting me like, hey man, sorry about your window. You know, and like those are the people I'm like, all right, peace, you're out. Like you don't understand what this is about. We wanted to start this program called the Urban Grape Wine Studies Award for Students of Color. We wanted to start this 5 years ago, right, to increase the access for people of color in our industry and let them know that this is a career that they should get into. But in order to start this with Boston University, we needed money to do this. About 2 years ago, sorry for the timeline here, about 2 years ago, we worked with Tiffany Faison of Big Art Hospitality, and then for those of you in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and New York, MS Walker. So these are two like family-owned businesses, one's on-premise, one's wholesale, and we wanted to create an internship, a paid internship, a mentorship program for people of color in our industry. At the same time, we wanted to provide free access to the Elizabeth Bishop School, which is a wine program taught by Sandy Block, MW, and Bill Nesto, MW at Boston University's Metropolitan College. And this is a program that I went through years ago, and I really liked it, but I feel that just the education of a product, in our world it's wine, it only gets you so far if you don't have the support and mentorship and internship. So we want to create a space and access for people. Our sales from June 1st alone allowed us to contribute and start a $10,000 fund, which will get turned into an endowed fund at Boston University. Suhail Ramirez, a Black queer woman, started at the Urban Grape in October and started at the Elizabeth Bishop School in September, taking this program. She's new to this industry. We've given her access, we've given her availability to come out and be an attractive person, hopefully be on a panel, speaking or listening one day. We have another woman starting in January. We've raised so much money without any corporate asks. And for all of you who understand when I say corporate ask, we haven't gone to Wayfair and say, hey, can you donate $100,000? This is the community. From the end of June, when we started this award, from the end of June until 2 weeks ago, we've raised $160,000. And this is a lot from my white clients, right? Because they feel that there does need to be a change, that they do need to see a young Black woman or an older Black man on the floor walking into a restaurant selling them wine. They need to understand that there needs to be a Black or brown person on the street selling wine to all of you in the restaurants. And they see that this is an opportunity for them to take their cash and support the industry that they also love, but from the consumer side. So yeah, the Urban Grape Wine Studies Award for Students of Color, once that hits $200,000, our goal is at the end of this year, we're gonna endow that. And that's gonna put 2 students in perpetuity through this program, as well as the paid internship. Because of COVID, we've given the restaurant side of this, the on-premise, where they'll work front of the house for 3 months, an opportunity to like, you know what? COVID, if you want to put this off until next year, because why take the financial burden of bringing on an employee for 3 or 4 months? And they said, absolutely not. Like we are doing this. And so this program is not going anywhere. This will be around in 30 years, which is amazing. And it's for free and it gives access. And once we have proof of concept here in Boston, here in Massachusetts, we want to take it on a national level and turn it into a 501c3 and have at a true foundation and go to other colleges and universities and hopefully some HBCUs and start some hospitality and beverage programs there. So it's a very long answer, but I get really excited about this.
I love it.
It's selfish, I'm tired of being the only one. And Boston's a small, very diverse but white town, and we needed to change that.
I love that you're giving people an opportunity to help in what way is comfortable for them as well. So thank you so much for that. Rounding out this entrepreneurship question, I'm going to go back to Alpana. I feel like we go way back, Alpana, when we went in 2009 with Evan to Argentina. And I felt it was so great when you opened up during our call and explained sort of the failure that really helped you stay calm in the sea of change around you. I call it the balls of steel that you have. How do you develop these balls of steel to be the leader that you are right now and inspire a difference in this industry, given all the crazy that's going on, given that's your 3rd venture?
Oh God, I don't know, blissful ignorance, I guess. But I think I've always operated from a place of I can't let your issue with me become my issue with me. And, I've been in this business for a long time. I mean, I got involved with the court when I was 18, 19 years old. I passed the advanced when I was 21. I passed the MS when I was 26. I was the first woman of color, the youngest woman. I mean, it's just like, it's a long career. But, what's interesting is just because you can pass things academically doesn't mean that you are mature emotionally. And I think there's that false sense of conflating the two. You still have a lot of life that's left to live. And, with people who pursue something like, the sommelier certification, WSET, et cetera, we don't handle failure very well. And running my first restaurant was the first time I'd ever experienced failure. And, within a span of like 6 months, I had closed 2 restaurants. And that was really, really, really hard on me. There's so much shame and guilt and coulda, shoulda, woulda, and, just publicly shame too. Eater had, for some reason, decided to put me on the masthead for 3 days straight, saying that I owed $1.5 million in back rent, which was a complete lie. My poor mom is calling me, worried about me. It's like it just like you go to places and you're like, are people talking about me? Like, oh my gosh, like I'm such a failure, such a failure. And I went through this whole period of mourning, and anybody who's gone through a process where they've closed a restaurant or closed any type of business, or, endings are the hardest things we'll ever do, is it took me about a year and a half. And I have to tell you, like, I was, I thank goodness I had a therapist at the time, but I began to question, do I even have a place in this business still? And I remember calling Evan, going, maybe it's time for a career change, et cetera. And I talked to Scott Oda about it when we were, in Chile, together. And it's, restaurants are the hardest thing you'll ever do. And, when this pandemic hit, I just noticed that I was kind of strangely calm, and I think it's because I had already gone through the emotions of closing a business. I'd already gone through it. I was kind of maxed out emotionally. And I knew what was around the curve. And what magically kind of happened, also being grateful that those 2 places closed, because I don't know what I would be doing right now if I had 3 to worry about during a pandemic. But what ended up happening was, because I didn't have to waste my bandwidth on fear and all of those emotions because I'd gone through it, I was able to kind of like go from a place of clarity, and having witnessed my own resiliency and having gone through it of like, I survived. And yeah, it would suck if I had to close my restaurant this time around again, 3 for 3, but you know what? I survived the last one. I got through it. And I remember I was at the Welcome Conference, I don't know, was it last year, I think. And I did this talk about, I don't know, it's sometimes we're just waiting for permission to say we're good enough. And I remember I got back to my seat, and Seth Godin, who's like this marketing genius, gave me like this, thing that he wrote. And he's like, you'll understand, like, when you open it, why I gave it to you. So I opened it up, and I said something that's like, I was waiting for like Oprah to come and pick me. And at the top it said, pick yourself. Nobody's coming to save you. And that's really what it is. Like in these moments of crisis, it's like, nobody's going to save you. You have to save yourself. But that comes from a place of understanding that you have everything inside of you right now, to make it happen. And I think that asking, for me, this whole pandemic situation, having that ability to ask questions from a place of opportunity rather than from a place of fear has been the difference between being successful at it somewhat versus just completely like melting down. And I know that's very easy for me to say, because if your name is attached, to the business and your mortgage and, your livelihood, and you've got a family, it's natural to experience that fear. Trust me, I get it. But, I don't know how to say to people, you just kind of have to push through it. And like I said, asking those places from opportunity, and everybody on this panel has been able to somewhat push past that fear and ask those questions from a place of opportunity. But not only that, but ask from a place of, what else can I do to continue helping people? Not even from a place of selfishness where they're like, how can I just continue to make my share and make my square? But what else can I do to continue helping people? And so, now more than ever, we have all of these tools to be able to, you got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got these stories and what have you. And, I think that once you like I said, put that fear aside and use whatever energy you have to think about opportunity and what people need and how can I service that. Like I said, it's been actually really kind of a healing thing for me to go from a place of feeling shame and guilt and closing 2 restaurants to being grateful that they did close. I know it's true.
Alpana, I'm really glad. I'm sure a lot of people here in our audience are really glad you didn't change careers. Absolutely, there is a place for you in this
Sorry, not going anywhere.
Well, for a round robin of my final question, and then for folks who have been asking questions and have questions that haven't been answered, please do put them either in the Q&A or in the chat. We would love to hear from you. And for the panelists, there are 4 of you. So if each of you takes about 2 minutes, we'll have time for questions. So the last question, Cristie, I'm going to start with you this time. How will you continue to innovate? What goes beyond this? I know that there's a lot of unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next week, let alone what's going to happen next year. What is next up for Cristie?
Well, I'm partnering with Master Sake Sommelier, and we're doing a Sake 101 course. I'm partnering with someone who's a big Bordeaux reference person in the wine world. I don't know if it's not a secret, but doing a Bordeaux 101 class. I want to continue to create like fun education that really brings accurate information to people at a beginner level, because the whole point, my purpose, like if this was a cash grab, I would have done it very differently, to be honest. I want to get more people to drink wine and high quality spirits. I want people to drink well and know and shop by region and not necessarily, and not shop by region and not just by brand. That's what I mean. And that's the vision. So 1 million people taking the wine course. I think that would be the next goal.
Great. Thank you, Cristie. Next to you, TJ. What's next for you, TJ?
What's next for me, besides my next Zoom at 4:30, 5 o'clock? It's interesting, the clients that I have, and I know all of you are the same, the clients that have always spent money with you, like real big money, they're spending more because, here on the East Coast, they're not flying to London every night to do a meeting or flying first class or eating in expensive restaurants. And so they're spending more money. So for the last couple of years, I've worked with a few private clients, and I created 2 years ago, the Urban Cellar, which is my private consultation side of the business, where I'm physically going in and managing client cellars, adding everything to a cellar tracker account and doing that. So that I see that there's a lot of opportunity right now because people are home and people are like renovating their homes or buying new furniture, and people have the time and the bandwidth to focus on wine. And so I think that is a great opportunity to let them really appreciate and hear the stories about the wines that they have, as opposed to just buying off of, a score or something like that, which we don't work on. Also really focusing on raising money to continue to the $200,000 amount for the endowment, so that we can take this on a national level, because our industry does need it. It needs it, just like so many other industries need it, not just our industry, but this is the industry that I'm in. This is the industry that I love. My friends work in this industry. What else is for Urban Grape? I don't know. I mean, we'll have to wait to see. There's a lot going on right now, and I'm back to, when I was opening up my first store, of what do I buy? What if people don't like what I'm doing, right? Like my store is not set up like in geographical region, right? It's not set up by varietal. It's set up in a progressive format, like a progressive wine list by the body of the wine. And so we want people to think about what they're actually drinking, just like Cristie said, right? Like take some weight in what you're doing, what you're putting in your mouth for wine. We want to focus that, get more education out there, do these virtual tastings. And we'll really see what happens, but it's keeping me up at night, but it's all positive stresses right now. But that's it. So
Great. I should say to everyone, we are going to include links to all the panelists' websites and their foundations and all that good stuff in this course when everything is over, when we put the recording up, so that you guys can access everyone's websites that are talked about here. Scott, I'm going to go to you next. What is next for you and your staff over at High Street?
Yeah, so, well, I guess now for us, the next step is our reopening process. I think the challenge, just like everyone else, is how we do it during the winter months. So we're doing our best to get different types of heaters that could essentially enclose and make it safe to be outside. But I also do know that we'll probably have to kick back up more of these wine classes again. And just kind of really hit it from a little bit more of a different perspective. So if we're talking about the money side, we've essentially just finalized our special events for social distancing. So we all know that in our industry, it's events that are making money. And then the passion projects are maybe things like the wine classes. So, if we're able to kind of be able to do a bit more online education for events or run happy hours. But again, trying to think a little outside the box. We're planning wine trivia nights, as I'm totally borrowing a page from the Canlis folks. But it's just, essentially just continuing to evolve. But I think the one thing that we always say for us is we're never going to change who we are. And so it's always about that same thing that both TJ and Cristie are talking about, is how can we get more people introduced to wine in different ways? How can we take a different approach? Maybe instead of just going over, the history of a particular region, now let's maybe look at it from a social change as well. And so to try to bring more and new interesting people into the conversations, and not necessarily just have the same conversations over and over about climate, soil, history producers, but now let's actually talk about the people that are behind it. Let's talk about the economics behind it. Why a region is poised to be an up and comer, and why you should pay attention to it. And at the same time, just making it super easy. But again, it's there's lots to go on, but just staying who we are.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Alpana, just to round it out, for you, what is next for Alpana and what's next for Terra Vine?
Just getting through the winter, getting through until there's a vaccine. But no, it's, I think what we're also looking past is sort of the, I don't use this term lightly, but the PTSD effects of after COVID. And I think that there's going to be some of these behaviors that are here to stay. Consumers have gotten used to, carry out cocktails, or have gotten used to like picking up wine, what have you. But also, I just read an article this morning about office buildings. There's a huge glut of office buildings in downtown Chicago. And, companies are like, hey, wait a minute, we don't have to have office space. People like working from home. And, that means that they're not going to have happy hour after they leave. And, that's going to be a less dense downtown area, and I just think that what are going to be some of these habits that are here to stay? And again, how to take advantage of that, and how are we going to change as a nation, post-COVID, and what does that look like, and the roles of restaurants, and just like things like ghost kitchens, and how we eat, and who feeds us, and where we live, and how do we interact, and how do we socialize, and it's just like I think that this thought that once the vaccine comes, and we're just going to go back to how it was, on March 16th, and I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that we are going to be in a recovery phase for at least 24 to 36 months after the vaccine gets implemented.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a couple of questions, and if there are more questions, please feel free to drop them in. Here's a question from Julian M. How have your distributors helped out with your new models? I know there are some distributors in our audience as well. What do you need from them, and how do you relay that to them? So anyone who wants to jump in and answer this question, if your distributor has actually helped you.
I think pricing is the most important thing, because as I've had to reduce the margins that I'm willing to work, that I'm able to work with, just to be able to make it more affordable, that right there is everything, just pricing. And, unfortunately, with restaurants being closed down, I know that there's a glut, and, I know that distributors need to make money too, but I've been taking advantage a lot of, closeouts and deep discounts, and passing along the savings to the consumer. But I think also, having access to winemakers to do Zoom events and virtual dinners and being able to market yourself that's a little bit more exceptional because people are going to be looking, especially goes into the winter months, of things to do to entertain themselves. We're I think, not that far away from the sourdough phase of the pandemic once again.
Scott, did you want to jump in with an answer with a distributor?
Yeah, I mean, I think just along the lines of what Alpana said is just asking for it. And I think, you know, one thing that we pride ourselves on is making sure we treat our suppliers and importers and distributors as partners. So understanding, say, hey, you know, I would really love to take this allocation, but at the same time, you know, we got to have maybe preferred pricing on something else to be able to take both. And so it really was a good conversation back and forth, where it's like, okay, what do we need? What do we need to sell? And it's interesting because at least when you look at the product mix, when I don't have the exact same floor like we do on a normal night in our bar, to be able to introduce people to these weird and cool new grapes, these really awesome new regions, when it was online without support, I mean, it was right back to all just the classics of the same, like your New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, your California Cabernet, French Pinot Noir, and it wasn't necessarily able to have that conversation. So we were able to take that information, then going back to our distributors and saying, hey, we don't normally go this way, but you know our philosophy, you know the kind of wines that we have, what do you have? And so really it was more about selections that were able to still fulfill our philosophy, but at the same time completely switch from us maybe going to some really geeky, nerdy orange wine over to maybe this a bit more consumer friendly style that we know could actually make us money. So again, just like a partnership.
Yeah, on that note on consumers, I'm going to lob this question at Cristie and at TJ. Miguel O from Chile. Hi, Miguel. Thanks for calling in from Chile. How have you reached your consumers in a better way during this pandemic? Cristie.
Well, I actually hired people to do Facebook and Google ads, and I really like leaned into updating everything on the website, just like making everything like really optimized and not shying away from it. And also like learning how to do like mass fulfillment by myself in my apartment, because yeah, and also like creating free opportunities for people to learn too. People just they want things to do right now, and I think that providing value first and not asking for anything in return has huge returns later, as I'm experiencing now.
Great. TJ, how have you communicated differently or better with your consumer?
Yeah, so I'm not allowed on our Instagram account. That's my wife's job. Like, she handles for at Urban Grape. I have my own, which I don't really post on. But we've always run our company very transparently, right? And as Scott mentioned, you know, like, you need to treat the guests the same way, paraphrasing Scott, but you need to treat the guests the same way that you treat, you know, your crew at the store, and your wholesalers, your importers. They're your partners. They don't work for you, right? Like, and so you have to. We take all of our relationships and we put them out there on our Instagram and let people know, like we're real people. Yeah, Total Wine is a mile away from us and Whole Foods is 2 blocks away from us, but like, we're the small business, we're real people. We put our kids on Instagram, we drink at home, we take bottles, pics. But also we are really and have always been really involved in our community. And where our community stands right now is that everyone wants to support restaurants. And so what we've been doing, last week was the first one, with Karen Akunowitz here in Boston. She's a chef with the crazy purple hair. But we did a pop-up with her at the wine counter, where she put a $25 meal out, a prepared meal of chicken parm, right? The Italian stuff, travels easily. Chicken parm, and how we promoted it. I was like, look, we were transparent. This cost $25 from Karen. We're going to charge you $48, and that's going to be a $17 bottle of wine and our credit card fee. And when Karen dropped off 90 of these, for 2 dinners, I wrote her a check for whatever, or I gave her like $2,400 of cash. And we like, here you go, she's got our cash, and we put that on Instagram, right? And we marketed that, but we marketed it in a very transparent way. Like, we just gave her 90 covers that night. you know, and that helped her. And, you know, tonight we have this small taco company, tacos and empanadas coming and doing the same exact thing. And we're passing it through. We're not taking a hit. They're not taking a hit, but we're very transparent. So I think it's the transparency that has upped our business on that. We've gotten more national exposure. Being a Black-owned business, you know, I say ever since June 1st, people have realized that we're a Black and female-owned business. But being transparent and using Instagram, right? It's free advertising, but you have to do it correctly, and you always have to stay on brand. You know, and I think that's very important.
Great. I have a couple more questions. Here's a question from Ted M. Is there a possible push for more availability of half bottles available now to replace these 750 bottles for by the glass? Do you think that that's a real possibility in your workings with suppliers for wineries to consider? Anybody?
I know the half bottles have been very popular for virtual wine tastings, but I don't know about their application for inside dining. But it's definitely for virtual tastings where people want to do a number of different wines for you know, dinners and things like that. They've been very popular because people are like, oh, what do I do with 4 bottles of wine and in one night? I mean, that's not a problem for this group probably, but still. So I think with that being said, but you do get that sort of extra supplemental charge. Unfortunately, you know, you pay like 30%. It's not quite a half price of it. But certainly, I think that for virtual events, I've had a number of clients asking about half bottles so that they can do more varieties without, you know, everybody having a lot of wine left over. I'm sure Cristie can speak to this as well.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, you know, at Spago, we had like 20,000 bottles at one point, and you know, we had an entire half bottle section, but I'd say for most people, it's just annoying. Like any type of bottle has a different size or shape. Yeah, I don't really like half bottles very much, to be honest. And I just use like repours. Like they're one of the sponsors here too, actually. Those little repours you put on the top of the bottle to save it.
Thank you.
Like,
yeah, thank you for the reminder. For those of you,
no, I love them.
For those of you who did crack open, as Evan asked you to, your bottle, don't forget to put the repour on. We're going to have Tom from Repour, the founder and entrepreneur from Repour, come on. I think he's on this call right now, but Tom is also going to come on Seminar 5. And God help me if I know when Seminar 5 is. I'm just trying to get through the first one here. But Andrea can tell you, and we'll tell you in a second. But, you know, make sure, thank you, Andrea, November 10th. Make sure you put the repours on after you take out the silver thing. You do need to release the silver in order to put the repour on. It will be really helpful. Tom is in for a massive beverage conference experiment. He is guaranteeing that that wine is going to taste the same whenever Seminar 5, November 10th hits. So that's a pretty big experiment that we're all doing together. So please make sure you do that. There is a question here if repours work well for magnums. I will tell you, Megan, that the answer is unequivocally yes. But if anyone from my team wants to get an official answer from Tom as well, that'd be great. Another question here is given from Jeff K. In the wine world, being historically white and male, have any of you met any resistance to your ideas or approach? How have you handled it? I'm going to start with Cristie. I see her smiling.
Wait. To repeat the question again, I started laughing. Sorry.
Given that the wine world has historically been white and male, have any of you met resistance to your ideas or approach? And how, if so, how have you handled that?
Always, every time, like a resistance all the time. And I'm used to it. And, you know, I think when you're focused on your vision and what you're creating and actually doing something good, it doesn't matter, you know, what people are being resistant to. It's usually something else, and you just continue forward. And just, I used to think of myself as a female first, and I would really, and a young female first, I would make my decisions through that lens. And I really just stopped doing that. And now I just act authentically, and I say what I feel, I say what I mean, and there's less resistance, but it's still always there.
Does anyone want to jump in? TJ?
Let me jump on. So when we're open to the store, there were so many times, and I mean, you and I discussed this, that, you know, people would walk to my old, 50-year-old white flannel, probably high at the time inventory manager, and start asking about, vintages in Burgundy, when I would go up and talk to him, like, hey, I'm the wine buyer and founder, like, this is my story, I've tasted all these, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. So anyways, tell me about the 16 vintage, and they would totally be dismissive of me. Since the door's been closed, that hasn't happened in person, which is great, but it's a little weird because, like Cristie, like, it's part of my makeup, right? It's part of my shield. It's part of my front of the house kind of smile. But with being so transparent as a company, as the Douglas family, my wife and my kids, we've had we've had a ton of new Instagram followers. We've had a lot of people that have like DM being like, why are you making this about white or black? And I'm like, well, why are you making it about this white or black, right? Or, as many newsletter people that sign up, we get a bunch that sign off because they don't care that we just hired, a 42-year-old Black queer woman who's now getting free education and going to go work. What about this person's job, or how come she couldn't do it by herself, right? And so we've lost some friends, over how transparent we've been, both politically and, trying to just make everything even, right, and equal. So yeah, I definitely get, I think you said maybe pushback or something like that off of that. But right now, I'm always very positive. I think there's more good than evil. So we're just going to keep on doing what we do. We're just going to keep on doing what we do. But yeah, it's still there, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. I think it's definitely still there. And I love today's theme, which is really pushing through. We're almost at time. I want to definitely share our screen here of what's coming next. This week, there are 2 more seminars. And please, if you have friends out there who are looking for something to do at 11 o'clock on Thursday and Friday, even without wine, for those of you who weren't drinking the Irie, you can see that you could enjoy the seminar even without wine. There's a lot to learn. The Evan Goldstein show with Keith Goldstein is going to come on, talking about the nuances of Côte du Rhône, which is different about the Côte du Rhône that we're going to go into the following week, which is specifically about village. So both very relevant. It's not replacing one or the other. And then, of course, on Friday, same great channel, same time at 11 o'clock is Right Place, Right Time, Right Wines, talking about Chile specifically. And this time we'll have Evan and Rebecca calling in from San Francisco. And I believe Vince is actually out in Germany calling in for that particular session. So please be here for that. Don't forget that we're hiring, but we're also picking a winner per session to receive the tasting kit. It took a lot of effort to get all of these wines tasted, rebottled into 187s for you guys out there. If you did ask for the kit and received a kit, if you don't use it, it makes us look bad to our sponsors. So please, if you received a kit, please use it. And if you do use it, you are going to be entered automatically to enter a drawing. If you attend all 8 sessions, even if you watch it later on, we are going to enter you to win an annual subscription. So without further ado, I'm just going to point to the fact that we have a happy hour that's coming up next. I think most of the panelists will be able to attend the happy hour. You need to go to your link. Andrea, if you don't mind, please put the link in the chat box as well. So if you guys want to copy the Zoom link as well as the password in case the audio doesn't work, you should be able to go to Thinkific and get into that. We're going to see how many people show up. If there are 10 of you, great. Evan, myself, all cameras are on. We're going to have a chat. It's just nice to see all the faces out there because it's kind of like talking to a dark audience right now. I don't know where you are, who you are. And so we would love to hear from you. And it will be a half an hour happy hour. So again, I think somebody from my team is going to put the things on here in the chat box. And I just want to say a final thank you. Thank you, Alpana Singh, TJ Douglas, Scott Oda, Cristie Norman. You guys are amazing. Thank you for what you do for the industry and keep doing what you're doing because you guys are just inspirational and wonderful to hear from everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Everybody.
Good.
See you in a sec.
See you in a sec.
Bye-bye.